Squadron left, wheel. Squadron right, wheel. Squadron mark, time. Squadron, halt. Squadron right, turn. All right.
Good morning, staff, students, and community guests. My name is Mme Chard, and together with Mr.Pora and our performers, we would like to welcome you today to our Remembrance Day Assembly. We ask that adults with cell phones please ensure you set them on silent mode. As this is a solemn ceremony, there is actually no applause after performances. Now I will ask you to please stand and remove your hat for the playing and singing of O Canada. Today's slideshow is for Remembrance Day, and it is concerning the Indigenous people's involvement in war. So since European contact, Native Canadians and Americans have been subject to wars on North American soil. Aboriginals fought during the French and Indian Wars, the War of 1812, and on the British-Canadian side, and tried numerous times to enlist with the Canadian and American forces in the World Wars. Often they were refused because of their heritage and mistrust. Some did not want to fight or were against being forced into something that was not their business. From 1914 to 1918, more than 4,000 Indigenous people served in uniform. Men joined up for several reasons, including seeking employment or adventure, just like most white and black people of the time. For some, it was to carry on a family tradition, because some of their ancestors actually fought in the War of 1812 or even in the French and Indian Wars. Most Indigenous soldiers had valuable skills: marksmanship, patience, and stealth, which comes from their daily life of hunting and just their traditions. Canada's two largely Indigenous formations of the First World War were the 107th Timberwolf Battalion and the 114th Battalion, also known as Bronx Rangers. Both served in the Canadian Expeditionary Force. This is a picture of the Blood Tribe recruits, the 191st Battalion, which is one other battalion, and they are the picture is taken at Fort Macleod in Alberta. One soldier of note was a man named Henry Louis Norwest. He was a Métis from Alberta, and he held the sniping record. He was a very famous sniper for 115 fatal shots and was awarded the Military Medal. He was one of the many who did not return from the Western Front, reportedly killed months just prior to the end of the war. As with the First World War, many Indigenous Canadians chose to serve, with approximately 3,000 in the military and Air Force. Coded messages were more widely used during the Second World War. Each side was tasked with creating unbreakable code that had military movement and attack plans. A lot of the codes were cracked by both sides, and what they decided to do was the Canadian and the United States governments and military employed Indigenous or Navajo soldiers. Because much of their history was never written down, they did not have an alphabet as we do for reading, so their teachings and their words were not recorded. Therefore, it made for an unbreakable code. They were called the Navajo Code Talkers, and what they would do is they would speak in code to another Navajo radio operator, who would then translate what they needed to their officers. This picture shows one of the battalions from 1942. That is the All Indigenous Code Talking Group. And the two books listed right beside are two very interesting books to read. The one with the black cover we actually have in our library, and it is a condensed version of the one on the right-hand side. For those teachers who are using the Veterans Affairs Canada newspapers in their classrooms, there are actually two articles currently on a Indigenous soldier from one of the World Wars and from one more recent war. So National Indigenous Veterans Day is observed in Canada on November 8th, 2 days ago, in recognition of Indigenous contributions to military service, particularly in the First World War, Second World War, and the Korean War. National Aboriginal Veterans Day was first observed in Winnipeg on November 8, 1994. A memorial statue stands in Ottawa, shows an eagle standing over 4 men and women, soldiers, and includes the wolf, bear, caribou, and bison to represent Indigenous values and to guard the humans in the statue. And for more information about Indigenous involvement, please take the time to visit www.veterans.gc.ca. We have a very short little video.
On plaide et quoi, et dans l'espace, les alouettes devenues lasses. Mènent le chant au sifflement des obusiers, nous sommes morts. Nous qui songions la veille encore à nos parents, à nos amis. C'est nous qui reposons ici, au champ de neige. À vous, jeunes désabusés, à vous de porter nos flammes et de garder au fond de l'âme le goût de vivre en liberté. Acceptez le défi, sinon les coquelicots s'évanouiront au champ de neige.
In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Field, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the lark still bravely swinging high, scarves her amid the gulf below. We are the dead, short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who died, we shall not sleep, the poppies grow in Flanders Field.
Please, we're a poppy, the lady said, and held them forth, but I shook my head. Then I stopped and watched as she offered them there. Her face was old and lined with care.
But beneath the scars the years had made, there remained a smile that refused to fade. A boy came whistling down the street, bouncing along on carefree feet.
His smile was full of joy and fun. Lady, said he, may I have one? When she pinned it on, he turned to say, why do we wear a poppy today?
The lady smiled in her wistful way and answered, "This is Remembrance Day, and the poppy there is a symbol for the gallant men who died in war."
And because they did, you and I are free. That's why we wear a poppy, you see. I had a boy about your size with golden hair and big blue eyes.
He loved to play and jump and shout. Free as a bird, he would race about. As the years went by, he learned and grew and became a man, as you will too.
He was fine and strong with a boyish smile, but he'd seen with us such a little while. When war broke out and he went away, I still remember his face that day.
When he smiled at me and said, "Goodbye, I'll be back soon, Mom, please don't cry." But the war went on and he had to stay, and all I could do was wait and pray.
His letters told of the awful fight. I can still see it in my dreams at night, with the tanks and guns, the cruel barbed wire, and the mines and bullets, the bombs and fire.
So at last, the war was won, and that's when we wear a poppy, son. The small boy turned as if to go, then said, "Thanks, lady, I'm glad to know. That sure did sound like an awful fight, but your son, did he come back all right?" A tear rolled down each faded cheek. She shook her head but didn't speak. I slunk away in a sort of shame, and if you were me, you'd have done the same.
For our thanks and giving is oft delayed, though our freedom was bought and thousands paid. So when we see a poppy is born, let us reflect on the British
Born by those who gave their very all when asked to answer their country's call, that we at home in peace might live. Then wear a poppy, remember and give.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to Mme. Chard as well as Mr.Pora. Tremendous amount of preparation went into today. And I just want to thank them for highlighting this important day for this assembly. I also want to say thank you to the MCs, performers, readers, cadets, and scouts for your tributes. As we prepare for the moment of silence and last post, we ask that you think of the sacrifices others have made and continue to make for you to be able to stand here today without fear. As you silently exit the assembly by the direction of your teacher, respectfully place your poppy on the table just outside.
Excuse me, I know that. That's a trombone. I think I know. That's a trombone.
One left, turn. Squadron right, turn. Squadron by the left, quick, march. Squadron left, wheel. Squadron right, wheel.
Ever since Canada's founding, we have fought many wars, most famously the Second Boer War, the First World War, the Russian Civil War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Persian Gulf War, the Bosnian War, and the Iraq plus Afghanistan wars. But in this video, I will be focusing on the First World War and why we do Remembrance Day. Before the First World War, there was a lot of tension between European powers, so they were just waiting for any little thing to start a war. In 1914, the Australian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife went to Sarajevo in modern Bosnia and Herzegovina, and he was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist. In retaliation, Austria-Hungary sent an impossible list of demands to Serbia, and when Serbia refused, Austria declared war on their friends. Germany and Ottomans declared war. So Serbia's friends, Russia and France, declared war. Germany knew that Russia would take a long time to mobilize, so they would take on France and invade Russia. So, to go around France's defenses, Germany invaded Belgium. So Belgium's friend, the UK, declared war. At the time, the UK controlled Canada's military, so Canada joined the war and sent 600,000 men and women. Austria was able to invade Serbia in 1915, but only after Germany and Bulgaria's help, and they took Albania in 1915. The Russian mobilized and was making gains in Austria-Hungary, forcing the Germans to send troops there. The Ottomans were first invaded by the Russian in the north, and Arab with the British were making huge gains with desert warfare. At the same time, there was also fighting with the African colonies. Germany was making huge gains in their offensive in Belgium and was only 70 kilometers from Paris, but after British counterattack, the Germans were forced to retreat. The trench warfare started, and that's when Canada started fighting the war. In the trench warfare, there were two lines of trenches on each side and no man's land in between. No man's land was filled with mud, corpses, poisonous water, rats, and disease. One side would send thousands of artillery shells on the other side, leaving them shell-shocked. They would run up from their trenches, running no man's land, while the enemy had machine gun fire until the other side was overrun. At this point, Italy had also joined the war, but they were stuck in stalemate. The Germans started breaking the rules of war by attacking civilians and using chemical weapons. In 1916, Germany declared war on UK's friend Portugal. Also, the Germans started the Battle of Verdun, the historical French city, and requesting help. The British started the Battle of the Somme with over 24,000 Canadian deaths. The Russians also launched a Brusilov offense to help France, and then Romania joined on Russia's side, but it was crushed. Greece also joined the war. British side, Russia had the Russian Revolution and turned communist and ended up the war on their side. After the Germans told Mexico that they would help if they invaded the US declared war on Germany and started pushing back. With the mounting pressure, Bulgaria surrendered first, then the Ottomans. Austria-Hungary, and finally on November 11th, 1918, World War I ended. It was an indescribable amount of suffering. Most families lost at least one family member to the war. Many people would be scarred for life. After some secret negotiating, the Ottoman Empire was divided between the British and the French. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, and Israel was established. Germany lost tons of land under the treaty